Hello and welcome to Alpha 22, MEIOU and Taxes in Europa Universalis. Now, where do we want to start? Of course, with new national ideas. Everybody likes to have unique national ideas for the country they want to play. So let's start with Lithuania. It's a very unique pick where you can decide the crossroads where you want to go. You could go with Poland. You could go and do your own thing, expand into Russia, into the Horse, whatever you want to do. Your idea groups are of course focused around your religion, that you can stay here in Remover, get some missionary strength bonuses and so on. You can get some military bonuses and everything that plays around the historical road of Lithuania and how it, is suited here. And let's immediately go to the next ones. So another idea group we introduced is for the Levantine tax here, so Damascus and Irkutsk, for example. They now have their own ideas, which are relatively trade and military focused. So you have trade bonuses, trade range, communication inefficiencies, culture bonuses, because it's a very multicultural corner of the world. Some cavalry bonuses here, unrest and culture bonuses here because of the setup basically. And Damascus steel as a noteworthy mention here for infantry and armament output. Another idea group we introduced is here in the West and North Africa. Now everyone knows already that we have a Tunisian setup for basically the ideas here, but now we've completed the North African ideas with an idea group for Fez, Zemcan and Grenada, which now have their own unique idea group or ideas, national ideas. Also Morocco has their own national ideas, which of course is spawning when Fez is falling apart. And also there is a special idea group for Deformable. If you are playing Grenada and go for a reconquest of Iberia, then you can get the Algarve idea group or national ideas basically. And now this corner of the world is completed with its own ideas. For example, let's have a look at Fez here. Also has some culture bonuses, a little bit bonus or negative to the tribes power, which were dominant in that region due to the atlas and the geography here. But also cavalry bonuses, topography bonuses on CE to help with the mountains here, trade bonuses, and of course some outputs to, let's say farming and food and so on, as it is it was a very fertile and warm region, so very good in producing stuff. Grenada also has its own unique ideas, which are of course semi-focused on giving you a chance to reconquer here, help you or push your trade forward, which is your main income at start. And if you really want to go on a reconquest, I can only recommend that you jump on Fez as soon as it starts to fall apart, because to survive to survive here on the Iberian Peninsula, you are going to need more manpower, you are going to need more punch, which you can only get if you get more stuff here to support in your fight. And then of course you need to find the weakness or the weak spot to strike back at the Iberians here. Another country which got a unique idea is Bulgaria, because it was lacking in the setup here. Malaysia is also still missing, but it's another idea which we added after Serbia and so on, slowly completing the Balkan setup of national ideas. And it's also relatively, I would say it's relatively mixed with a lot of different bonuses, from military to production to missionary strength, but also some diplomatic bonuses here. It's a very rounded idea group for a country which can develop into multiple directions. And that's, have fun with it. And that's it, at least for the new national ideas, which found their way into the mod now. And I do want to jump into the Mamluks to get started on changes in the background and explain what we did in the mod itself. Therefore, see you in the Mamluks. Okay, here we are in Egypt or Mamluks. I picked this country because it's a major trade player here in the Mediterranean at the get-go from the start, and I just want to generally mention the changes to trade which we did. So I already mentioned some when we were in the overview or the starting view, and now what you can see here in all beauty is of course the new Levantine trade node with changes to the Inner Arabia node, so they are split off here now more clearly, separating coastal from inland trade. And that's some of the stuff we changed in the trade setup. There's more stuff to be discovered if you look around the map, and yeah, it definitely changes the flow of trade which we have. Check out my special trade video about the changes to the general concept, how the trade works. So like for example, I'm going into detail of the trade UI, which we for example can see here now. I'm not going to explain every detail here now because then the video would get too long. Now, diving into general changes which we did, for example, impacts which we have here are, for example, on the military side. Now, let's take you have an army which is considerable, like the 21k the Mamluks start with. If you train your army now, the drilling is much stronger. You have a positive factor from your army professionalism. So where is it shown? Here it's shown. So you get a bonus from your army professionalism, therefore it's easier to keep the armor drill up, which the AI likes to do. Therefore, the armies, if you drill them, are stronger. If you have high army professionalism, it's even easier to train your armies. And in general, there was a lot of rebalancing in regards to how army professionalism works, how your training works, and how the armies are getting recruited and so on, therefore making that more fleshed out system. Also in regards to military, there have been changes to how troops are levied, for example, from the tribes and especially the horde tribes, making them a little bit weaker because the force limits the hordes were pulling off were quite high, but also like countries like Ajuran here and Okilva in the south were fielding very large armies, therefore could steamroll non-tribal nations or small tribal nations very easily. The costs for these were increased, but also if you have the right reform, I'm not sure if, no, Mamluks do not have volunteers, but for example, the Ottomans have volunteers. Volunteers also got increased in cost to make them a little bit weaker. You could sometimes run a whole army based on volunteers because they were cheap and relatively easy to get with some state reach. Also, the ideas that you need to reform your military have been adjusted a little bit. So if you go here and want to reform your stuff, for example, to hybrid military, it's only 2 ideas now. It's now between 2 and 4 idea groups that you require to do your reforms. But most importantly, for example, naval ideas, which is something you want to take as a colonizer or you are forced to do, is also counting into your reform. So you are not locked out of getting higher military reforms if you, for example, play Portugal and you rush exploration. Then you are not like 1 or 2 idea groups behind in reforming your military, only like 1 or so. That's a little bit less, let's say, punishing for the mid or end game, where you really need these military reforms. In general, the military system has also seen some changes to like the supply and stockpiles. You get a debuff if you have not the required goods that you need for your army. So let's check it out here. So you have a maintenance goods here, which you need for your army. And there have been some adjustments around it. You have a war stockpile now. If your war stockpile is not filled, you get also debuffs to your military. Therefore, pushing more focus really into the trade system which I'm explaining in the other video in more detail. Therefore, playing around that even more and playing around the goods that you produce and trade in your empire. So you really should produce enough military goods and enough food to feed your army in case of war, and maybe you should declare war on someone who is feeding the goods that your army requires if you can't produce them. That's something also to consider now with the general army changes we did. Now the next change I want to dive into has to do more with Catholicism and religion itself. So let me switch into another country. Okay, welcome to France. Now the next changes are mostly related to the Pope and everything surrounding Catholicism and the Reformation, which is coming inevitable at some point. Now, if you have a cardinal, for example, France here has currently 4 cardinals, you really get a vote on the Pope, also the election of the Pope when it happens, and it's no longer fixed to a set of countries to vote. Instead, really every cardinal is one vote in the election now, therefore it makes more sense for you to look out for the votes you really got and maybe conquer into territory to get more votes or more cardinals if you really want to. And also surrounding these elections of the Pope, a lot of changes have been done. Also the general behavior of the whole system, for example, with the schism, which is supposed to happen or will happen now. Sometimes it wasn't. It's the same for the Jan Hus crisis basically happening in Bohemia. These things have seen a lot of fixes. For example, if you were able to resolve the schism within a very short time frame by basically declaring war instantly, as France or, for example, Naples was very good in doing that as it borders the stuff here, you could prevent the Hussite events from spawning or happening, so that was not designed. All of these kind of things have been streamlined a bit more, and some edge cases have been, well, smoothed out to be more, well, how they are supposed to do. Also, the excommunication that you can do if you are the Pope or the Papal Controller, rather, which you have as an interaction. I'm not sure if I can currently excommunicate someone. Could I excommunicate England? I don't know. Probably not. No. If you can excommunicate someone, it has now a much bigger negative impact, so it's more hurtful if someone is really getting excommunicated now again. It still gives this casus belli like in the past, but it also has some negatives now alongside, so you really want to prevent that. Most of the cases where it will happen is if you really annoy the Papal States by conquering stuff down here or similar, which is sometimes not recommended unless you want to go for Italy or something. Also, more later in the game, the HIE related stuff with the religion. So the league wars have been adjusted. If it comes to it, there can now be up to 3 league wars. They can more consistently happen now. They are more brutal in the regard to devastation, which has to do with other changes we did, but also they are now more streamlined to really happen and not be resolved too quickly. So it's something you really want to look out for. And it's destined to happen now, and it will probably happen more than once. Therefore, you get some more 30 Years War feeling. And that's basically in regards to the religion changes here, or the adjustment and fixes we did. There's, of course, a lot more stuff. We fixed some minor things. I cannot go through all of them. Therefore, feel free to read the patch notes. But let's stick with France. There has been some other changes here in regards to the 100 Years Wars. It's now that if England wins it, for example, then there's no longer this created Dauphin, which was happening here. Instead, France is becoming a personal union under England, and then you can at some point form however that union was called. I can't remember right now. And so the 100 Years War has been a little bit fixed in regards to how it develops more smoothly and more AI friendly and also more understandable. Also in the same region, the Burgundy developments or setups and events have been smoothed out a bit to make the developments here and the changes like Hainaut, I'm not sure it's spelled, and everything here, Flanders and Surrey and how it develops have also been smoothed out and been, let's say, they have been developed and to make it more accessible and not create tax from the like new countries from the get-go. It's like behaving a bit more smooth now. And also similar here in this region now, North Italy, if you for example played Milan and you were forcing or wanting to go out of the empire at some point, let's check the empire screen here. You sometimes run into the situation that some minor states here were rejoining the empire even after the Shadow Kingdom was firing, which of course should not happen, which is now blocked. So if the Shadow Kingdom fires and everyone is leaving here, then they are out of the empire and will not rejoin really again, unless forced to. And also in that regard, which is more like a global thing, but it also happened a lot here in the Balkans and in France and Castile, at least what I saw, is the unwillingness of the AI to make peace. For example, a good example is Rome and the Ottoman Empire here, that they were beating each other and someone was at 99% war score, but they didn't peace out for some weird reason. The AI didn't want to peace. Now the likeliness to make peace from war exhaustion and from war goals has been adjusted a bit to hopefully lead to no senseless wars, especially if the peace desire modifier is active, that the peace deal really happens in the near future and does not, like tick up the war score for both parties unlimited basically. And that's more or less the changes here to the religion, France, and more or less Europe in that regards, despite the changes which I already mentioned at the beginning in regards to the idea groups, which we added. Some other fixes that we added here are regarding, as I mentioned already, like the hordes in regards to the military, but also if we tag to the White Horde, for example, so let's go there. The reforms that you could do, which is probably not visible here right now, no it's not, that you could change into a monarchy, which only happens if you have, okay, it's not updated here right now, because I would need to wait a 1 year event here. The changes that you can transform into a monarchy have been smoothed out. There were some bugs when we introduced it, and it's definitely now working properly, and you can transform into a monarchy if you want to, and that works as designed. Now for the next stuff I will switch into another text and first see you in a second. Okay, here we are in Mali. I picked Mali because it basically shows the other big set of changes that we did in a very good way. Now, if we change to the trade map mode again, Mali, for example, has gold mines. We did some changes about the gold mines, about the ownership of them, to increase the state ownership of gold mines, that they are, well, compared to the past or like before, that the state owns more stuff in regards to gold mines. It's more historical that the state could easily levy taxes or get the revenue from gold mines. That's why they had increased interest compared to other taxation which were more complicated to do. And we are representing that to have basically increased state shares in these gold mines. And also in this region, which is good to show, what we reintroduced is a dependency on the soil quality for agriculture, for example, it's now back and influencing how the fertility or the crop effectiveness here everywhere is basically. So you should check the soil fertility map mounts out and like check the terrain information if you want to grow fruit somewhere. Also in this region we do have trade provinces here, trade post provinces, which are important for colonization. These provinces now cannot be colonized by a standard colonizer. It even says here in the UI, the trade post province cannot be colonized with colonists, only through expeditions. Therefore, this will slow down the AI, but also the player, to block out everyone else from a node, basically, because these provinces really now have to be targeted with an expedition to be taken. It's not only important here in Mali or the Gulf of, how it's called, Guinean Coast, but also like South Africa here, which is not visible right now, which you could easily block off by having 2-3 colonists and some expeditions, and then everything was taken. This is no longer possible that easily. It takes way longer and might not be in your interest because you want to rush to East Asia or something, or you only want to take the major and the really good trade post to, well, develop them. Due to the changes to the trade system, it's not that beneficial to have many provinces there right now. Instead, you really want to have a good trade center, high commerce values in one province, and that's all you need, more or less. And this has, what I just explained, it has an impact, of course, on the how you colonize and how you get your goods, for example, exotics from the east to the west. In regards to exotics, we also did some changes to the availability and the production exotics. We, as you know, we have been rebalancing a lot of stuff in the past, and it continues to create more price differences and create more shortages, but also with the trade changes to produce more how the goods flow, influence more how the goods flow. So that's something we are working on. And in regards to food, not only the soil quality, which now has an impact, but also the population. If it produces food here, it has now changed in regards to the subsistence. Beforehand, subsistence was a factor impacting everything that the province was producing. Instead, we have now a kind of system where the population has the right to buy first, basically. If they produce food, the peasants can buy it first, or rather consume it first. They don't even buy it. So more food is partially not entering the trade system anymore. Instead, it gets consumed right away by the producing population, therefore reducing the availability of food in the trade system significantly. But also, trade it's now harder to trade food, basically, for the commerce industry. We have restrictions that you, for example, cannot buy food from China if you somewhere here and you have a food shortage. So it's much more complicated now, or rather impossible, to transfer food along many trade nodes, because that's unrealistic. In fact, historically it was a nightmare to get food over the equator, for example, due to temperatures and the lack of refrigeration in that time frame. Okay, and last but not least, let's switch back to Europe. Okay, here we are in everyone's favorite country, Eastern Roman Empire, or the Byzantine Empire, depending on how you want to call it. Why did I pick it? Now, everyone knows the event that when the empire gets absorbed by the Ottomans and disappears, that the cultures get replaced by the Greek culture, and a Greek nation is getting course on these provinces. It has been firing very fast. We did some adjustments here to prevent creating too many stuff too early, and that's something we were adjusting here. But also in that region, we are here at the end of the Silk Road, more or less, like depending on if you take the northern route, which was ending here in Tana and in Kafr, the Persian route, which was basically ending here in Damascus and Antiochia, and the southern route, which was going through the Indian Ocean, ending here in Egypt. The northern routes here, they got, or the middle routes got some buffs to commerce to make them more stable and give them the option to really trade the stuff from the east. So there was some changes to it, which should help with it. And also, in the ideas here now, it's just a minor change, but I think does diplomacy have it? No, it doesn't. Some idea groups have envoy travel time. Let's see where it is. I'm not 100% sure. Here we are. Eminence ideas has envoy travel time. Some national ideas also have envoy travel time, which have an impact on communication efficiency, therefore how fast and everything travels in your empire. In regards to the CE modifier here, the impact of that are now properly working. There was some bugs in there beforehand, which might have some minor impacts for countries which have modifiers for that, or if you take idea groups which have this impact. Therefore, it's some small adjustment which I find noteworthy or worth to mention here. Now, in general, after everything I mentioned here, I do think the interaction with the trade system which we changed is much more in favor of the player, that you really want to check out, okay, what am I producing, what are the prices in my empire, what am I lacking. For example, here in Constantinople, I can see that the exotic prices are rising relatively quickly, luxury goods are falling relatively quickly, so maybe I need to find markets where I either can get cheap exotics or can sell my luxuries at a high price. Of course, the Byzantine Empire has other problems right now, but in general, the new systems and mechanics we put in place, or changes we put in place, encourage you more to be aware of what you want to invest, what kind of country, farmland you have, like what kind of fertilities you have, to really see and check where you want to invest, what you want to do, and have a much more smooth economic experience, but also, of course, do what you want to do politically and militarily. And with that, I do think I'm coming to the end of the bridge overview. Of course, check the patch notes. They are extremely long, in my opinion, this time. We really did a lot of fixes, a lot of changes, and feel free to check them out. And maybe you find something which I didn't mention, like a special fix you maybe reported. I want to say thank you to everyone who reports bugs or reports findings or adds ideas and gives us ideas or checks out for flaws and unintentional side effects of events or whatever, like we have seen here in Burgundy, but also some of the general stuff here in the HRE and the papacy, which saw a lot of fixes. Therefore, see you in the next video, and feel free to check out my 2 videos which come out alongside, which one of them is the first 5 years as we learn, because I thought we do need a new introductory video for players who are new to the mod, and also the trade in depth, where I explain some stuff, what you can do with it and what kind of information you can get from it.